Come back and confess a few things for us so we can get to know each other better and we won't have to kill each other. Because that's the truth. If we know each other's story, we won't kill each other. That's what I heard. I'm sticking with it. Our next storyteller is so fantastic. I can't believe I didn't know her earlier. You ever have a friend like that where you meet and we're like, God, I wish we knew each other when we were in kindergarten. We'd probably get kicked out of kindergarten. But this is Mary Weber O'Malley, and she is one of the most enthusiastic booksellers. If you want to buy a book, go to Anderson Bookstore in LaGrange, because she'll be there and she'll tell you everything you need to know about every book that's on every shelf. And she's been up on stage a couple times and she told a couple stories, and today she realized that she had a theme to her stories, and her theme is death and dying. And so she's decided she's going to write a book with all these stories that she shared. So isn't that great? Yeah. So when you come to VoiceBox and you start telling stories, who knows what could be birthed out of that? So please give it up for Mary Weber O'Malley.
Yay! It is never good when the phone rings after 10 p.m. And in the days before caller ID, you didn't dare ignore a ringing phone. So I answered with an anxious, hello? On the other end of the line was the funeral director at Howell and James, who hesitantly said, Hi, Mary. It's Howard. I don't know how to tell you this. I've been in this business for over 20 years and something like this has never happened. Not having any clue how to begin to respond to that, I let Howard continue. I went to Cook County Morgue to pick up Joe's body, and it's not there. The veterans came a couple of days ago and took possession of it. Holy crap, Howard, where is he now? Well, that's the thing, he replied. They buried him at Abraham Lincoln Cemetery. They gave him a whole funeral with full military honors. Now, nothing about this situation had been normal, but I really didn't know what to do with this unexpected twist. So after a short pause, I answered, Well, Howard, it's really great that the veterans took care of him and everything, but you know his wishes were to be buried with his family. So what do we do now? I think Howard probably was a little more than relieved that I was not losing my shit. I imagine in similar circumstances, other people might not have taken news like this quite so well. Yet after everything else, this just seemed like one more weird turn of events. And Howard was pretty matter-of-fact when he replied, Well, we're going to have to go down and exhume the body and bury him where he wanted. But it's going to take a couple extra days to make that happen. What else could I say but, okay, Howard, keep me posted. I guess I better make some phone calls. Let's back up for a moment, back to the magical time of my childhood in the 1970s on North Spring Avenue in LaGrange Park. Almost directly across the street from us lived Joe and Jim Froh. Two bachelor brothers, Joe and Jim looked nothing alike. Joe was slim, somewhat of a shabby dresser, who smoked cigars, loved good beer, spoke several languages, was a World War II vet who fought in the Battle of the Bulge, and who owned a Christmas tree farm with his brother Jim. An enormous man who wore a bright yellow tuxedo when ushering at church, Jim was bald as a cue ball, smoked a pipe, collected coins, and had a habit of saying, mm-hmm, after every sentence. Jim had an affinity for all things date-related. If you told him your birth date and year, he could tell you what day of the year or what day of the week you were born on, and any other weird or important facts that happened on that day. June 21st, 1967. Yes, That was a Wednesday, Believe the Yanks played the Red Sox that day, Joe and Jim were both avid collectors. Some might say hoarders. And their house was full of cool and awesome stuff. Radios, books, gadgets, and knickknacks covered every available space. At one point, they added a dog to this mix. A St. Bernard named Samson, who was huge, like Cujo huge, but a favorite among the kids on the block. Samson died one very hot summer day, and Joe could not get anyone to come and pick up the dog's body. So he dug a hole right next to it, and he rolled that dead dog right in there. I always thought that anyone who happened to buy that house and decided to add on to the back and started digging would be in for one hell of a surprise. Now, in today's world of paranoid parenting, kids would probably be told to stay away from the weird brothers across the street. But this was the magic bubble of Spring Avenue, and Joe and Jim were like our eccentric uncles. We kids were always welcome on their front porch for stories and popsicles and cans of yummy brand soda. Once an ice cream truck broke down on our block, and rather than see all the ice cream melt, Joe paid the driver to hand out ice cream bars to all the kids in the neighborhood. And Joe could often be found around the other neighborhood legends, Harry and Irene, joining in on piano sing-alongs or conversing in German with Irene. He was a fixer of all things and became the block handyman, especially for my mom and her friend Janine, both single moms with young children. If your bike broke or something in the house needed repairing, Joe was our go-to guy. And he would arrive wearing his old work pants, a collared shirt, and a beat-up old cardigan sweater. No matter what the temperature was, even in the heat of the summer, we never saw Joe's arms. I asked my mom about it once. She told me that during the war, Joe had almost frozen to death, and the experience had permanently changed his body temperature, so he never felt completely warm. Now, Joe did things in his own time, and that included when his Christmas tree got dragged out to the curb. One year, that tree stayed up right until July before the bone-dry skeleton with a few brown needles was finally dragged out. And although Joe was the friendliest, most helpful man, he could be a little reclusive. If he didn't feel like talking, he just wouldn't answer his door. You'd be standing on the front porch, looking through the window, knocking on the door, and there'd be Joe sitting in his recliner, and he just wouldn't turn around to acknowledge you. Always invited to various houses for holidays and barbecues and family dinners. Sometimes Joe showed up, sometimes he didn't. That was just how he lived. And he remained an iconic part of that neighborhood until one day in the 80s when I received a phone call from a neighborhood friend who told me that Joe was going to lose his house for failing to pay his property taxes. The neighborhood rallied around him and offered to pitch in and pay the taxes for him, but he refused. Jim had died years earlier, and Joe just didn't seem to want to deal with the house any longer. He didn't seem to care that he was losing it for a mere few $1,000s in back taxes. Maybe that was just easier than the thought of clearing it out and selling it. Instead, Joe packed up what would fit into a couple of suitcases, walked out of that house, and moved into the Hotel Norland across the street from the LaGrange Road train station. The Hotel Norland was a transient hotel located above the old newsstand, and legend has it, Errol Flynn once slept off a bender there. With tiny one-room apartments and shared bathrooms on each floor, it was all Joe needed. You actually had to go through the newsstand to get buzzed in, and the cashier stood guard so no one got by without permission. After moving there, Joe could often be seen riding his old Schwinn around town and just living his life as he saw fit. I would often run into him, and as we stopped to catch up on life, I could sense people staring. Never a stickler for fashion, Joe in his later years really did look like a homeless person. Now and then someone would tell me they saw him rummaging behind the jewel in the dumpsters or picking some treasure out of the trash on the curb. But this was how Joe chose to live, and he was happy. Then in July of 2001, I got a panicked phone call from a friend. Joe was dead. He had died in his room at the Hotel Norland, but had laid undiscovered for several days. The managers would tell us nothing except that they had reported his death to the authorities and the body had been picked up. They didn't know where he'd been taken. Head spinning, I did some quick research and made a couple phone calls and discovered that with no next of kin, Joe's body would have been taken to the Cook County morgue, and now he had laid there for days, unclaimed. And my heart broke as they told me that unless someone came forward to claim his body, Joe would be buried in an unmarked pauper's grave. Hell no. No, that was unacceptable. Not gonna happen. I called everyone from the neighborhood I could think of. I called the local paper and they agreed to run a story. I called the VFW Lodge and explained that a Battle of the Bulge hero was laying in the morgue and we were working to get him a proper burial. And then Irene's husband, Paul, told me that he sometimes gave Joe a ride down the street to the local bank to do business. So Joe must have an account there. Maybe they could help? I went straight to the top and I called the president of the bank and explained the situation. Not only did he know who Joe was, he was a close personal friend. Not only did Joe have an account there, he had several accounts, big ones. They also had a copy of his will on file and it gave specific burial directives. Hallelujah and holy hell. The bank president was so grateful that we had tracked him down, but he was leaving town the next day and could not oversee the arrangements personally. Because I had gotten things this far, he asked if I would see them through the rest of the way. I would work with Howell and James for all the planning. The funeral mass would be held at St. Francis, and Joe would be buried in his family plot next to his parents and his beloved brother, Jim. So here we were, a ragtag conglomerate of old neighbors from Spring Avenue parading into the funeral home where poor Howard had the great fortune to be put in charge of our situation. After a lengthy and I'm sure confusing explanation of how we all came to be there, Howard took on the task of making the arrangements. The funeral was set for a few days later, a Friday service with a Saturday burial. Howard explained that because of the state of decomposition of the body, he would have to wait until the day before the service to bring the body from the morgue to the funeral home. At the time, this did not seem like a big deal. Now fast forward to my hanging up the phone with Howard after learning that Joe was now in a grave in the wrong cemetery. The veterans had taken care of one of their own, but Joe's wishes had been very clear. I had to call people and let them know that although we'd still be going ahead with the memorial mass the next day, the funeral itself would be sometime the next week. Some people took this news better than others. One person suggested we should look at a lawsuit. But this was no one's fault. Who could have imagined that a man who wasn't going to get a proper burial at all was now going to have two? My last phone call for the evening was to my friend Lou. As I finished explaining the situation, I shook my head and said, "Joe Froh, what an elusive man, even in death." Lou laughed and replied, "Joe Froh, the man so nice, we buried him twice."
I have a song here. It doesn't fit on my tiny phone, but we'll see if I can.
You were listening.
All right. Sorry for anyone who cared to see my face. You can watch the video if this is good enough to make it. Last night I dug your picture out of her old dresser drawer and set it on the table and I talked to it till 4. I read some old love letters right out there till the break of dawn. bones. Then I went through the jewelry and I found our wedding ring. I put mine on my finger and I gave yours a fling. Across this lonely bedroom of our recent broken home. Yeah, I'm just sitting alone, digging up bones. I'm digging up bones. I'm digging up bones. Exhuming things that's better left alone. I'm resurrecting memories of a love that's dead and gone. Yeah, I'm just sitting alone, digging up bones. And I went to the closet and I found some things in there, like that pretty negligee that I bought for you to wear. And I recall how good you looked that time each time you had it on. Yeah, I'm just sitting alone, digging up bones. Everybody say, I'm digging up bones. I'm digging up bones. Exhuming things that's better left alone. I'm resurrecting memories of a love that's dead and gone. I'm just sitting around digging up